Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Uh, Welcome to the webinar. I'm Maria, a research associate with the Prayas Energy Group. Let me begin by welcoming everybody to the webinar. Currently, we have around 50 participants who are already joining us online, and I'm sure in the next few minutes, we will have more people joining us. At today's webinar, we hope to provide a perspective of Prayas's engagement in the energy policy space. We will also be giving you a sense of what working with the organization is like. But before we begin, I request all the panelists to switch on their cameras. I will now detail the structure of the next hour or so. We will begin the webinar with a presentation on Prayas's journey and history by Ashok. This will be followed by a presentation on Prayas's current activities by Anne. We will then have an experience sharing session with Abhiram, Manubika, and Narendra. This will be followed by a question answer session moderated by Nimita. Shilpa will be the host of this webinar. For a smooth conduct of the webinar, we request all of you to type out your questions in the Q&A section that you see on screen. We will collate questions of a similar nature and ask them during the question and answer session. We request that you ask questions of a broad nature so that they are of interest to everybody. Now with that, I hand over control to Ashok and ask him to make his presentation.
Thanks, Maria. I'll just load up my presentation and start sharing my screen with you. And in the meantime, just share with you that as you might have guessed by looking at my video for the short period and my beard, that I've been here for a long time. And my goal today is to share with you a broad perspective about what Prayas is and about our organization, what drives us, what motivates us, what are the kinds of work we do very broadly, and a very brief kind of a history of Prayas as we have been till today. Obviously, you will appreciate that I cannot go into too much detail covering about 25 odd years of history of the organization in 10 minutes. So I'll give you a very high level overview of what I'm going to speak about. So Prayas is a non-profit organization that was whose work actually began in the early 90s, and it was formally established or registered as an organization in 1994. And the goal of the founders of Prayas was to ensure that professional knowledge that many professionals possess, in particular the founders possessed, they would want to use that to address some of the challenges faced by society in a strategic and sensitive manner. So, and as the initial set of founders of Prayas happened to be a bunch of engineers and doctors, it is not surprising that the two active groups of Prayas that we have today are Prayas has an energy group and Prayas also has a health group working on health issues. But of course, today's webinar is about the energy group. So the rest of the presentation and all the other talks that follow will be about the energy group. So why did we choose to work in the energy sector in the first place? Well, because energy is something that has a very close connection with society. As many of you might know, modern energy forms are a very critical input to human development, whether it is at the individual and household level where we need access to, let's say, electricity or good cooking fuels to lead our life, access to modern forms of mobility, or if you're talking of industries needing energy to manufacture their products, which make our lives good, and so on and so forth. And of course, energy also has a big connection to the environment. Energy production, consumption, transmission, all have major environmental impacts, and therefore energy is a very important subject from a sustainability point of view. Then there's also the economy, and energy is a huge part of the economy. It is a very investment heavy sector. You need thousands and thousands of crores of rupees to start off energy projects. Energy is a big player in the entire national economy. So for all these reasons, we thought it's a good sector to work on. And what does Prayas try to do in this space, Prayas Energy Group? Well, this is a very succinct statement of the kind of things that we try to do. We are basically an organization that's driven by values. We are very, very focused on analysis-based work. That is kind of what we believe is our primary strength. And we engage in the policy space. We use the analysis and driven by our values to work in the policy space to further what we believe is the public interest. And our vision may be articulated as the fact that energy essentially becomes a tool for sustainable and equitable development for all human beings in India. And as the vision statement says, our focus is essentially on India. Towards achieving this vision, as an organization, we have a bunch of objectives, which I'll quickly run through. I'm not going to read each of these things in detail, but essentially we want to focus on, we want to ensure that there is universal access and good quality of supply of service of modern energy to all Indians. There is a security of sustainable energy supply to meet effective demand. So one needs to meet the demand, there needs to be secure supply, which is of course, as we saw in the earlier slide, responsible along all these three dimensions of society, environment, and economy. And something that is probably not a very common objective that many organizations would have is the whole issue of democratization. We strongly believe that the energy sector will only become stronger if it is more democratic, in the sense that more and more people who are affected by it or who have any kind of say in terms of either consuming energy, producing energy, being affected by energy, all need to have a say in the decision making, and therefore increased transparency and public participation and accountability are important objectives to pursue. So given this vision and objectives, what is it that we do as an organization? Well, as I said earlier, in a way, our USP may be said to be rigorous analysis. So we are a very back our work with strong analysis. And we try to take a very comprehensive approach also. And by comprehensive, I mean that we are talking about looking at the issue from various perspectives, from the point of view of various stakeholders. So it's not only, let's say, an economy perspective or an environmental perspective or a social perspective or the perspective of consumers or the perspective of producers and so on. We also engage at multiple levels. We work at the national level as well as state level on policy related issues. And the result of all the work that we do manifests in various forms. So we have, let's say, reports and papers and articles and so on that we publish periodically by ourselves, or they're published on other platforms. We also produce, this is a more recent development where we have started producing a lot of tools and models which other people can use and also kind of engage in this whole understanding of the energy sector. As I said, policies and engagement with the policy process is an important objective for us. So we do submissions, interventions, etc. in the policy process. And we also produce other forms of output such as videos and blogs and so on. So the next couple of slides, I'll very quickly run through what have been our major contributions in the energy sector in the last 25 odd years. And I'm not going to go into the details. I'll just focus on more on the types of contributions we've made rather than the specifics of the contribution. So policy and planning processes is one thing where we have made significant amount of contributions. Some examples are listed out there. This range from legislative processes such as the Electricity Act of 2003 or substantive issues such as India's climate policy or appliance efficiency. We do a lot of work on governance. As I said, democratization is an important goal for us, and therefore governance is an important area of work for us. So we worked on issues like sanctity of contracts, looking at capacity addition planning, how it happens, institutional issues and other kinds of issues. We have started building a lot of models and tools. There's a whole list of them that we put out there, and these are built by us, usually for use by anybody. And you can find many of them on our website. We have also kind of come out in the process with a bunch of what might be called as landmark publications, which have proved very popular in the sector, which a lot of people use, such as the Know Your Power, which is commonly known as a primer on the electricity sector, and a book that we did a few years ago called Many Sparks But Little Light, reviewing India's electricity reforms over the last 20 odd years. We also collaborate with other organizations and other groups. In particular, I would like to mention here that we engage fairly extensively, and we have engaged fairly extensively with civil society organizations, grassroots organizations, working in various states in India, and to some extent, even internationally, we have collaborated with other organizations. We do have some collaborations also with academia and other government agencies as part of our work. And last but not the least, I would like to say that we are part of various kinds of committees. You may be aware that governments and other policy-making agencies often set up committees to look at issues and make recommendations to them. So we have been part of these committees at various levels, at the central level, state level, by the NITI Aayog, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and so on and so forth. The last thing that I just want to very quickly run you through is the kind of evolutionary journey that Prayas has taken, the Prayas Energy Group has taken to reach where it is today. In the early days, early 90s to late 90s, we were a very small group of about 2 to 5 people and looking at very specific projects and trying to find issues there and highlighting the issues there. As we moved to the late 90s and early 2000s, we became a slightly larger group, maybe 8 to 10 people. And our focus also went from specific projects to broader sector level issues, electricity sector level issues. And by the mid 2000s, when the new Electricity Act was formed and the entire electricity sector was being transformed by making it more market oriented and so on, we engaged in the act formulation, national level issue, policy formulation, and so on. And the group had also grown slightly more by then. And from the late 2000 onwards until the early 2010s, we opened up a few new areas which started becoming important around that time, such as renewable energy, climate change, and so on. And commensurate to working on these new areas, the size also grew a little bit. And this process continued in the next, let's say, 8 to 10 years in the between through the 2010s and towards the late part of 2016 until now, where we have added a few more areas of work, such as looking at coal, at the supply quality issues, started doing tool development, started looking at cooking energy access, looking at residential energy, and so on and so forth. So this was a very, very brief, and I understand that it must not have been very easy for you to follow, but this is, unfortunately, we have only about 10 odd minutes to cover this whole story. So this is a very brief run through of our entire story to you. And after this very brief history of Prayas, I'll now pass it on to my colleague Anne to run you through what is it that we are currently working on. That will give you a better flavor of what is it that we are doing as an organization. Over to you, Anne.
Thanks, Ashok. As Ashok has covered a lot of the activities that we were engaged in the past, I would like to focus a little bit on what we are doing today. So we are continuing definitely with creating knowledge and discourse building within the sector. And that is definitely through reports on specific issues that may not be, or issues that are not really dwelled into that much in the mainstream, and which have public interest significance, collecting primary data, putting out data and knowledge portals to ensure building of discourse within the sector, evidence building through modeling related exercises to help decision making. And as Ashok had also mentioned, a lot of this can also happen through articles, blogs, presentations before different fora to disseminate the kind of analysis that we have. It's not just enough to build a discourse within the sector, but also to use this evidence for advocacy and for bringing in change. So we also engage with policy and regulatory institutions and have engagements related to advocacy at the central and state level in our official capacity as consumer representatives before official government and regulatory commissions, and also public interest engagement in official spaces that exist due to statutory provisions that exist for public interest participation. And one thing is to, of course, point out through analysis definite issues with the sector, but it's also really important to characterize solutions for some of the challenges that exist before the sector. So we also try and come up with policy ideas which are innovative to address some of the sector issues. And I've listed some examples here, but I'll go to it later in the presentation as well. And we are also actively looking for collaboration and fellow travelers with us in this journey to ensuring better energy sector governance. And that is done through knowledge support to civil society organizations, working collaboratively with other organizations, and also building capacity and enhancing capacity of sector actors at large with tools, guides to understand the sector a little better. So that's the sort of gamut of activities that we are currently involved in. And our work itself is organized in various streams which sort of interact with each other. As you might have noticed, a lot of our work is in the electricity sector. So electricity policy and regulation does form a large area of the kind of work we do. And it ranges from looking at policy and regulation right down from generation all the way to supply. Looking at demand and how to improve energy efficiencies, looking at some of the disruptions that are currently there in the sector, whether it's renewable energy, storage, development of markets, and also looking at techno-economic and financial aspects of the sector, whether it's tariffs, subsidy design, and the kind of financial issues with distribution utilities and the sector at large as well. Connected to this definitely is, not just the techno-economic aspect of the sector, there are also socio-environmental impacts of energy. So looking at some of the socio-environmental impacts of energy supply, looking at access as a major issue, because our focus is also a pro-poor focus. So looking at supply and service quality of electricity, increasing access to modern cooking energy, and governance of related sectors. So electricity also has fuel related linkages, so which definitely influence the kind of governance issues in the electricity sector. So looking at some of the governance issues in the fuel related sectors related to energy, and thinking about energy transition from a fair and equitable perspective is also something that we are working towards. And to assist in all of this work, there's evidence building through different forms. One definite form that you want to focus on is looking at modeling, improving access and quality to official data by engagement in official committees, and also by providing this data in the public domain in an easily accessible fashion, and collecting primary data on issues that are not very well explored to understand the sector a little better. So given this broad gamut, I'd like just to focus on some recent examples of our work, so you also get a better flavor of the kind of things that we're involved in. So as I mentioned earlier, we need to have innovative approaches to look at sticky issues in the sector, and agriculture is definitely one of them. Supply and service quality to agriculture is a major issue. And the idea that we had was to have 1 to 10 megawatt solar plants at the 11 kV feeder level to cater to agricultural consumers. A lot of investments have already been taken place to separate feeders, such that there are dedicated infrastructure from the feeder level to cater to agricultural consumers. So since the infrastructure is physically separated, having a solar plant at that feeder level to cater to all the agricultural consumers there could be an option. And the plant itself can be developed on a 25-year fixed price contract by developers through a competitive bidding approach. This is the idea, and this seems like a win-win approach, because such an idea would definitely ensure daytime supply to farmers who are currently getting supply at nighttime. It reduces the cost of supplying power, because solar is available at 3 rupees per unit or so, whereas the kind of the kind of money the distribution company has to pay per unit is about 5 rupees per unit. So there's definitely savings in cost for the distribution company, and since agriculture is subsidized quite significantly, it also means a savings in subsidy. So the distribution company, the state government, and the farmer all see benefit with this approach, and the farmer can also get power during the day, even on a cloudy day, etc., because during the day at least the network is connected to the larger network and drawal can take place. Such a scheme has already been implemented in Maharashtra, and that is what we had suggested to the Maharashtra government as well, and we were part of some of those deliberations. So about 3,000 megawatts are already in various stages of deployment. So a large proportion of farmers in Maharashtra could benefit from this scheme in the coming years. More than 70% will definitely benefit. This central government scheme called KUSUM, the component A of KUSUM, is very much modeled on this similar approach, and is already being implemented in 5 states. And there's also talks of a dedicated central government scheme for such an approach, with some incentives which are there in the work. So this is one sort of example of innovative approach. The other example that I want to talk about is with respect to sustained engagement to improve governance in the sector, especially through regulatory processes. Again, this is related to agriculture, and the fact that a lot of agricultural consumers were unmetered, and their estimation of demand or the amount of energy that they consume is norm based. It's based on a norm, and that norm is typically overestimated, which means that there is an incentive for losses to be also classified as agricultural consumption, and therefore there is underestimation of losses. So the veracity of these numbers have been questioned many times. Civil society organizations along with Prayas in Maharashtra have been making analysis-based submissions to question this all the way back from 2000. And based on sustained interventions, the Maharashtra Electricity Regulatory Commission constituted a working group. And we were part of that working group, which assisted in developing a methodology which looked at the 11 kV feeder energy input data. So at least till that feeder level, the amount of energy is accounted for, and substantiated that with consumer level survey data. So about 502 feeders with automatic meter readers and 1.3 lakh consumers in Maharashtra were looked into to develop this methodology. And the findings were such that even those consumers that were called metered, only 27% of them had meters. And even those among those consumers that had meters, only many of the readings were incorrect. So clearly metering is something that can be worked on in Maharashtra. And clearly, because of our analysis, the analysis of the working group, you're also able to show that there's significant overestimation of agricultural sales by the utility, and the impact was significant because based on the analysis and the submissions of the working group, agricultural sales estimations in Maharashtra were revised. So they were revised downward by about 22%. And as I mentioned, there is a close relationship between losses and sales. So there was a 6 percentage point increase in your distribution losses, which is connected to your AT&C losses, a oft used metric to look at performance in the sector. So definitely this would impact operational efficiency of the utility and was a contribution which is interesting. Again, as I mentioned, looking at data, data collection, data dissemination is an important part of the work we do. So I'd like to point you to the renewable energy data portal that we are currently hosting, which looks at data on renewable energy from various sources in a visual manner, which you can look at through different visual representations, and which can be used for time series as well as cross-sectional comparisons. So do take a look at this portal. We have another initiative called Power Perspectives. The whole idea is to provide very brief commentaries on important developments at the center and the state level, given the federal structure and the concurrent nature of the electricity sector. Looking at what's happening in states is really important. So that is part of our initiative. So do take a look at some of the commentaries and analysis that are there on this portal that we are hosting. We also have some modeling efforts that Ashok has mentioned. And the reason that we thought modeling is something that is really important and we should get into it is because it's good to understand sector trends, especially with so much of disruption happening in the sector, and to move away from thumb rule planning. Just economy is growing by 7% per annum and therefore electricity demand should too as well, is not going to really work in the future because of many changes. And towards this, we thought we'd have in-house development of some open source models. And why is that? Definitely to increase access to modeling tools, because a lot of proprietary softwares are prohibitively expensive and may not be accessible to many people. And also, if it is open source, you can encourage sharing of assumptions and therefore discourse within the sector. Two such examples are GridPath and Rumi. GridPath is a capacity expansion of a production cost model. So it can help look at what kind of capacity needs to be added for a geography and also how to manage the existing capacity given different changes. We use this for Maharashtra to basically understand what happens if more and more renewable energy gets taken up with the system, if no thermal or no coal-based capacity is added, and what happens if, let's say, demand also changes, whereby, let's say, agricultural consumers actually consume during the day rather than the night. Rumi is again a disaggregated bottom-up energy systems modeling platforms to basically understand energy economy interactions, looking at estimating energy demand and supply in the future. We've already done detailed modeling for the residential sector, and work is being initiated for the transport and the industrial sector. Speaking of the residential sector, that is an area which really a lot of work needs to be done because it accounts for almost quarter of the demand in India. And with urbanization, electrification, shifts in income, there's also a very likely possibility that this is going to grow in the future. But there is not really enough information out there from surveys to look at consumption trends and behavior around residential energy demand. So one initiative that we have is to actually use IoT-based systems to track appliance consumption in various homes. So to basically understand how people use their appliances on a real-time basis. So this data is tracked and reported on our website, and we use this for our policy insights. Abhiram, my colleague, will also talk about this a little bit. The other examples are, of course, of looking at primary surveys to understand energy consumption patterns and appliance use. So one definite example is, we did a survey of rural and semi-urban areas in Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra to understand how people use different appliances. And another one on looking at cooling behavior. So looking at how room air conditioners are used specifically in tier 2 cities, where demand is picking up quite a bit. So not just how they use it, but also what kind of decisions go into purchasing some of these appliances. And all of this information about the survey questionnaire, the data, all of this is there in the public domain on our website. So if you like, you can also play around with it. So this, I hope, gives some sort of a brief flavor of the kind of work that we do. I'll hand it over to Abhiram now, who can talk a little bit about his experience with Prayas.
Thanks, Anne. Hi, hello, I'm Abhiram. And, let me just share my screen. Just give me a moment. Hi. So I have been with Prayas for about 4 years now. I have studied botany, geoinformatics, and then technology and development. I worked for a few years in development planning for a couple of years before joining Prayas. Let me start with the SME and EMARC initiatives, which have formed the major chunk of my work. The images that you see are the hosts of SME devices in Uttar Pradesh, the two families. So under SME, we have deployed more than 400 mobile internet enabled voltage monitors in more than 25 states in India. This initiative has also had 4 international pilots in Indonesia, Tajikistan, Tanzania, and Kenya. SME team members could visit some remote locations in India and abroad for these SME installations as well. We also had an opportunity to deploy a few ESMs, that is these monitors you see on the screen, in a few Indian districts with the help of various government bodies like the Rural Electrification Corporation or the various electricity regulatory commissions of Rajasthan, Assam, and the joint ERC as well. Now let me shift to EMARC, which Anne just mentioned. We have deployed energy monitors in about more than 100 homes in India, and we are monitoring the energy use and various patterns into it. So this is one of the visualizations on the EMARC website that you can see. I also worked in data analytics and creating visualizations from this analysis. Understanding and translating this data into inputs which can be used for policy research is a very exciting thing to do. We have developed the renewable energy data portal as well, which Anne showed. It presents data in a visual form, which is accessible, which has filters, and you can play with it, and then you can use all of that into your own work. Then I also had a chance to contribute to some extent to the in the agricultural work group committee that we spoke about earlier. And then let me come to the work culture at Prayas. I like the work culture for 2 reasons. First is that it's a very professional and a really non-hierarchical working space. The second is that all of the first reason, whatever I told, is done with a loud laughter. More important discussion, louder will be the laughter. So this is a great place to work with fun-loving professionals. The last thing I'll like to mention is Prayas is also a cycle-friendly workplace, and a lot of us do cycle to work. So now with that, I'd like to ask Manavika to take over.
Thank you, Abhiram. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Manavika, and I've been working with Prayas as a research associate for 4 years now, since 2016. I joined after completing my master's in regulatory governance from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. And it felt like a natural transition for me to engage in public interest oriented research, given that I wanted to understand more about equitable resource allocation and consumer protection. And these were ideas that I was navigating while pursuing my master's as well. Moreover, right after my bachelor's degree in economics, I was pretty certain that I did not want to go down the conventional road of being a data analyst and joining big corporations. Thus, pursuing a master's in regulatory governance and then joining Prayas aligned with my career visions. At Prayas, my work has been focused on understanding various aspects of electricity distribution companies' finances and looking at aspects of electricity access. Topics that I've worked on include looking at the issue of surplus power in Indian states, looking at how subsidies are provided to electricity consumers and what it means for distribution company finances. Then understanding how state level regulations can be updated to ensure accountability for supply and service quality of electricity now that we have officially attained 100% electrification in the country. While it is largely a desk job, major interventions through our research work involves talking to various stakeholders in the sector as well. In a pre-COVID world, that meant visiting regulatory commissions, attending hearings, and interacting with state-level civil society organizations. And I've found these interactions to be quite insightful. Another big part of why I enjoy working at Prayas is that you can walk up to anyone at any point in the day and sound out your questions and ideas, and self-expression is encouraged. This made it a lot easier for me to join fresh out of college and find meaning in the work I do. So that's all from me about my time here at Prayas. I shall request my colleague Narendra to speak to you next.
Thank you, Manabika. It's really wonderful to see the number of people who are interested in knowing more about Prayas and working with us. Without getting too much into the work aspects, as a lot has been covered by my colleagues, I hope to touch upon some aspects of my journey that you might find useful, as I'm someone who joined more recently. Yeah, so my name is Narendra, and I joined Prayas last year, right after finishing my master's in public policy and governance. Prior to that, I worked in process and product design for automotive clients for about 5 years. The work there primarily involved energy systems, components, process engineering, end design, and deployment. So after having done all of that, how am I here? I would say the reason drew me to pursue an interdisciplinary master's rooted in social sciences after having done mechanical engineering is the same that motivated me to join Prayas thereafter. Having experience in a technical field, I wanted an add-on and study something that was more public spirited in nature, and also wanted to work in an area that was not in a socio-political vacuum. And in Prayas, I found that opportunity to bridge that gap for a public-centric work and in the energy sectors to top it. Speaking a bit about my work here, I am involved in examining the governance aspects of sector to make it more efficient in general and accountable to the consumers. I'm also involved in building a model to take a holistic view of how India's energy systems would change over the next decade. These are vastly different work streams, yet they are interrelated. Both are futuristic and long-term initiatives with no anxieties of producing quick fix solutions because that's not possible. And the learnings from one helps apply brakes on making unrealistic assumptions in another. I would say the thinking and producing here is rigorous. Nothing can be passed off as a solution without peers holding one another accountable, non-hierarchically. And this is what I like most about working in Prayas. And this is also reflected in our online offsite activity where we enter into day-long deliberations on who we are, what must we focus on, and how do we plan it. And experiencing that in the right at the first year in an organization kind of grounds you in the collective vision. And it also helps you focus on the work more as your place in the whole policy process becomes clearer to you. And of course, any workplace would be incomplete without a bit of timely fun. Apart from the fun activities that Abhiram mentioned, even within office, we routinely huddle up over topics we want to discuss, crafts making, music, book reading, and we call these sessions Vada Pav Wednesdays, which are also multilingual in nature so that everybody in the group can participate. And we take our Vada Pavs as seriously as our work. So that's it from me. I will be happy to answer any questions specific to my experience here. Now I will hand it over to Ashok, who will briefly speak about Girish Sant Memorial activities. Over to you, Ashok.
Yeah, thanks, Naren. So, as Naren mentioned, I just want to very briefly share with you one other kind of activities that we are doing, which is kind of an activity that, or a set of activities we do in memory of one of our founders, Girish Sant, who was one of the people who set up Prayas way back in the 1990s. Unfortunately, he passed away at a very young age in 2012. So, as in his memory, we at Prayas, along with some friends and well-wishers of Prayas, together undertake what a couple of kinds of activities to keep his memory alive and to help promote the kind of work that Girish pioneered. So one is we conduct an annual memorial event. This is usually a panel discussion on a topic of relevance in the energy or climate change kind of sector, which we organize in Pune, which is where we are based. This happens in February every year, the month that Girish passed away. So that is something that happens on an annual basis. In addition, in order to encourage young people to follow the kind of path that Girish set and to kind of adopt the kind of methods that he used, we have instituted a young researcher fellowship, which is targeted at people who are starting out in the policy analysis space related to the energy sector. And these fellowships are issued, I wouldn't say every year, but roughly every year. And in fact, one call for fellowships is due, and we hope to put that out, let's say, in a month or so. So these are two other activities that we do as Prayas, but as in collaboration with a few other organizations who are friends and well-wishers of ours, in order to keep the memory of our founder Girish alive. With that, I think we come to the end of our presentation side of the story. I'm sure there are a lot of interesting questions that you all have, which we would like to answer now. So I'll hand it back to Maria to take the webinar forward. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Ashok. We will now take up the questions that we have got. As stated earlier, we will collate questions of a similar nature and take them up together. If you have more questions, please send them in through the Q&A window. But again, we suggest that your questions be of a broad nature so that they are of interest to all. I now invite Nimita to moderate the question and answer session. Thank you, Maria. I would like to direct the first question to Manabika. What background is Prayas looking for while hiring? Are we open to hiring candidates with background in other streams like math, law, engineering, with an interest in research and policy?
Thanks, Nimita, for the question. Yeah, we are looking for candidates with interest in research and policy with strong analytical skills. We have a multidisciplinary approach to our research work. So candidates from various backgrounds are encouraged to apply. Comfort in working with numbers and reading legalistic documents on a daily basis is a plus. I'll stop there. Thanks, Nimita.
Thank you, Manabika. Next question, I think Ashok, you would like to take that one. Is Prayas looking for particular experience level while hiring? For instance, are we open to hiring like freshers in particular, or candidates having PhD or any like work experience, etc.?
Thanks, Nimita. So in general, we are open to people, as Manabika just said, people from various backgrounds and various kinds of experience levels. We prefer masters and above if you are have a masters and above, but if you are also an undergraduate with exceptional skills, we are also open to that. In terms of we don't so necessarily insist on having a PhD or something like that. But I must also say that currently we are focusing more on younger people, though not necessarily freshers. So you don't necessarily have to have graduated in 2020 or 2019 or whatever, but relatively younger people. So we're not looking for people with, let's say, 10 years or 15 years experience at this point of time. But in general, of course, we are open to all kinds of people who apply to us. Thanks, Nimita. Over to you.
Nimita, we are unable to hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, Anne, you might take up the next question. How does a PEG project originate? Do we have any interaction with other sectors like water or agriculture? And like how is the PEG's take about the new topics that we haven't like worked with before, or that we are not currently working on?
Okay, that's a whole lot of things to answer, and it's quite complicated. I think the way Prayas looks at projects is, what are our internal priorities? So what are our values, our expertise and skills? What are the backgrounds of the people who are within Prayas? I think that plays a major role. And also, what is the external environment or context? And, what is the public interest imperative for a particular topic? Having said that, whatever we look at in Prayas, it takes a long cooking time, and we take up projects only when there is long-term engagement. So it's not really, you can't really call it a typical project which ends in 2 or 3 years. Prayas is an organization that follows something for a much longer period, tries to get a better understanding of the sector and engages at different levels. So it's a long-term engagement is what is looked at. But having said that, I think anybody within the organization is free to propose new ideas and new projects and new areas to work in. They have a very non-hierarchical structure, and as long as we have the prerequisite skills, the time and the investment to make towards that, then definitely we can take up those projects. And with respect to water and agriculture specifically, I think till now we've been working, our area of expertise is looking at energy, and we have been looking at the intersection and the linkages between agriculture and energy. But water also plays a very major role in that. So going forward, we can consider it as something that we can do, given this matrix of decision making that I spoke about.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Actually, there is a question in continuation with this line. So you might want to take that also. Okay. How do we assess the impact of our work?
Okay, so I think Prayas is also a very introspective organization. We talk a lot about what we do internally and what difference we are making in the larger world. We also have a review and advisory committee consisting of people who've been tracking and following our work, who are eminent in their fields and are from different fields connected to energy. So we also run some of our work and our strategies with our review and advisory committee. We have offsites where we discuss amongst ourselves. Everybody in the organization talks about the work we do and what work we want to do in the future. And as I had said, impact is also not something that we assess after very short engagement. Impact is something that we have to track over very long term engagement. So some of the work and initiative that we take today might yield results only after 2 to 3 years. So we have to patiently track that as well. And impacts can also be of 2 different types. One is, of course, if we are able to build discourse, we are able to ensure there is some uptake of ideas and this change in the sector because of that. But also stalling decisions detrimental to sector development is also a kind of impact. So these are the sort of things that we can track and see whether we are effective in the sector or not.
Great, Anne. Thank you for answering so many questions consecutively. My next question is for Shilpa. Shilpa, can you tell us what are the current positions at Prayas? What is the recruitment process like? And do we do campus placements?
Thank you, Nimita, for that question. So we are currently looking for research associates. You'll find more details about the same on our website on the jobs tab. So all the communication related to hiring happens on energy-recruitment at prayasPune.org, which you can see on the slide right now. So the recruitment process involves writing to us with your resumes and including your answer to a question that has been asked on this page. So if we find the application to be a good match, we have a couple of rounds of interviews. These interviews could be on the phone, video calling, or in person. Sometimes the candidate is also given an assignment to do. Having said that, since we are quite a small team, we might be a bit slow in our response. So I request you all to be patient with us. And regarding your question on campus recruitments, yes, depending on the need, sometimes we do have campus recruitments also. Thanks, Nimita.
Okay, good to know. Narendra, you might want to take the next question. Other than full-time, what are the engagement options with Prayas? Does Prayas encourage part-time collaboration or internships?
Right. Thanks, Nimita. So let me answer the last part first regarding internships. Definitely, we encourage students who are driven by similar passion as ours, which Ashok mentioned in his slide, to render energy as tool for sustainable and equitable development for all citizens. So we encourage candidates to write to the email ID, the recruitment email ID. And if there is a match and we have the bandwidth, we do offer internships. Coming to the first part of the question regarding other engagement options with PEG. Most of our work, as Anne has mentioned, is long-term and with a reform mindset. So if you take a look at our publications, Prayas has tracked specific issues for many years and engaged in research and subsequent advocacy. So often it requires a lot of time to understand any particular issue or a problem before one can, meaningfully contribute. So most definitely a volunteer engagement is welcome, but with the caveat that it would also have to be full-time and long-term. Hope that answers. Thanks, Nimita.
Okay, great. I would like to direct the next question to Abhiram. What is the work culture at Prayas? Can you talk a bit about the diversity and inclusion aspects of PEG?
Thank you, Nimita. I would like to start by saying that first of all, Prayas is an equal opportunity employer. That means candidates from all genders, castes, creeds, languages, regions, etc. are welcome, and you will be hired based on your merit. We have had members from all over India and with various educational backgrounds and professional backgrounds as well. Next, about turning to work culture. Prayas has a zero tolerance policy for any form of sexual harassment in the workplace or any organization related activity. And we also have an internal committee in order to raise awareness about sexual harassment at workplace, to prevent any sexual harassment. And if any sexual harassment occurs, the committee is also supposed to address any complaints that come from it. Next is we have very fluid teams. That means there are no hard-bound teams that these 4 people will work on this issue, that type of thing. Rather than that, researchers contribute to the work that we have according to their skills, expertise, and interests. But since our work usually has a very long gestation period, as Anne just said, once you commit to something, you would be spending a lot of time working there. Thus, what ends up happening is over time, one can get to work with almost everyone in the group. Next, I would like to say is we are a very open and non-hierarchical culture. That means group members are approachable for help or questions or just a chat. And there is no sir, madam that goes on in the office. Group members are also involved in decision making. The annual offsite, like Naren mentioned, is the best example of this. It's a 2-day long brainstorming session, which is hosted away from the office, and discussions around near and far direction the organization wishes to take form a major chunk of that offsite. Prayas encourages you to acquire new skills as well, which will be helpful for the organization and you as well. Going forward, I think Prayas is a fun-loving and a foodie organization. Our meetings are not drab presentations that go on for a few decades, but they are crisp presentations followed by animated discussions, to say the least. Then office parties are a very frequent occurrence, and whenever a major report or output or an event is done, we have one. Naren already spoke about the Vada Pav Wednesdays, which are an extension of these. Then we have of every once in a while the whole group goes on trips where discussion revolving around nothing related to work from the major chunk of these trips. And we some of us also go on trips and treks together, although they are not not formally Prayas activities. That's all from my side, Nimita.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm sure our participants must have enjoyed all the description. Coming back to Narendra again, if you could tell us what is the role and responsibilities of a researcher in the organization?
Right. Thanks, Nimita. I would say the role of a researcher is here is multifaceted. So my answer will not represent strict work items as such, but broadly, a researcher starts out in one or more work streams that was presented earlier and supports ongoing work with their inputs. So which could be literature review, conducting data analysis, peer review, or designing survey instruments wherever applicable, and so on. This is as far as proactive engagements are concerned. For reactive engagements like responses to regulatory processes, parliamentary committee submissions, so on, these happen when they happen. So tracking the process, being able to identify windows of engagement becomes an important part too. And everybody at Prayas also plays an advocacy role. So outreach, speaking to co-travelers outside the organization, engaging with other civil society organizations, academicians, exploring common interests, representing PG's work in different fora, and so on, are also a part of role and responsibilities, I would say. Hope that answers. Thanks, Nimita.
Yeah, I hope that gives a nice and clear picture about the work life. I would like to ask next question again back to Abhiram. Okay, does Prayas undertake technical or quantitative research projects? What are some of the tools or platforms being used for the same?
Thanks, Nimita. If by technical research you mean research in energy technology itself, then largely no. As Ashok and Anne have already mentioned, we largely focus on research regarding policy and interventions which work towards policy. However, we do use quantitative research in our work. We have group members with expertise in statistical analysis. They use packages like R, MATLAB, or Scilab. Then some use Tableau or Python, and others are experts in things like econometrics or cost accounting and similar things. We use power sector models like Plexus and GridPath, and we are also developing an energy system model called RULE. Thanks, Nimita.
Yeah, thanks. Ashok, can you please answer the next question? What does career development look like within the organization? Will there be opportunities to carry out field work and or work with government institutions?
Yeah, thanks, Namita. So, yeah, this is, I guess, a natural question for somebody at the beginning of their career to have. So, what I can say is that Prayas does offer you ample opportunity to grow as a person and as a professional in the energy sector, because it will offer you excellent environment for learning and for engaging with hard issues, and for discussing and brainstorming this with other people, as Naren and Abhiram and so on have said. And this essentially and going, and of course from a more shall we say practical point of view, if you are with Prayas for a significant amount of time, and if you are able to contribute to this whole journey that we are on in terms of contributing to the policy and governance of the energy sector in the country, then you do have a you will grow with the organization, so to say, as a person with increasing responsibilities and with increasing, shall we say, visibility in the sector. If your question is specifically about will my designation change from X to Y to A to B, I would say perhaps not, if that is the goal. But if in terms of the richness of your experience and in terms of what you'll be doing and the experience you will be having, definitely yes. Did that answer the question fully, or did I miss out some part of the question? Sorry, Nimita. If there is something that I missed out, please let me know and I'll try and answer that.
Okay, yeah, it sounds good, Ashok. Thank you for that. It was precise, pretty precise. Okay, Shilpa, you might want to take the next question. Now, the next question is a bit of a different type than what we were discussing until now. What is your leave and working time policy?
Sorry, thanks, Nimita, but I didn't get your first line.
Yeah, so what is your leave and working time policy?
Right. So we typically coordinate within our teams and decide when to take a leave. And as far as our working times are concerned, we work Monday to Fridays from morning 9:30 to evening 6 o'clock. Yeah, thanks, Nimita.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Ashok. How is the organization handling the pandemic situation in terms of prospective candidates outside Pune and regarding stability of operations in the future as a whole?
Yeah, I suppose this is a very natural question to ask in these times that we are all going through. It's a very strange time, and it is a bit of a strange time for Prayas also. There's no doubt about it. But having said that, I mean, one can look at this from various points of view. One is because Prayas, like any other organization, Prayas is also not an island. It is situated in the wider world, and in that sense, the changes that are occurring in the wider world does affect Prayas also. So, for example, a lot of our policy engagement activities now kind of become somewhat difficult because of all the changes that the pandemic has brought about. The economy has slowed down. Therefore, the whole process of the sector's development is now kind of happening in slow motion. The way we engage with people, so earlier one could of course go and have meetings and participate in conferences and so on and so forth, participate in hearings. So all that is also becoming harder. The ways of engagement are changing. The policy making agencies, in particular the government agencies themselves, their priorities are naturally different right now. They have other priorities that perhaps are higher on their agenda. So this does affect Prayas's work. To deal with that, we have also, shall we say, readjusted our working style and our working mechanism to focus on issues that are of slightly longer term nature and more, shall we say, purely research based work. But from a stability point of view, I really don't see any challenges to the organization. We are fortunately quite stable right now, and we don't see any worries on that count. Though, of course, one should be prudent and cautious and review the situation regularly to ensure that things stay that way. In terms of kind of getting new people in this time, yes, that is not easy. It is difficult. As Shilpa said in answer to the question about our recruiting process, we are a careful organization. We conduct multiple rounds of interviews, and ideally we would love to do that at least once in person, because definitely a person-to-person interaction is a very different thing from an online video interaction. But in these times, we have had to change our approach, and we are also kind of adopting more, shall we say, online and virtual processes to go ahead with our recruitment. And I can actually say that we have had one person who has actually joined us already and has effectively been working remotely because of the current situation. And we have also kind of hired another person very recently who will be joining us remotely. So in that sense, things have not stopped, but things have slowed down perhaps, and things are happening in a slightly different way. I guess that answers the question. Back to you, Nimita.
Yeah, awesome. I'm sure this answer was pretty assuring to the participants. So thank you for that. I would like to ask next question to you, Manabika. Does PEG participate in national, international conferences what are some notable conferences that PEG has recently been a part of?
Thanks, Nimita. I'd say most of our time is dedicated to research work, and since it's involved, like Anne and Ashok have already mentioned, it takes up quite a lot of our time. But we do participate in conferences occasionally, and if some engagement directly aligns with our current work or areas of interest, we do participate in such conferences. That involves attending conferences organized by our peers in the field or, say, governmental organizations. Yeah, so that's the answer. Over to you, Nimita.
Okay, great. Okay, Anne, if you could answer the next question, please. How is PEG different from other organizations in energy policy space? Are we open to collaborating with other organizations or academicians?
I think there are different kinds of organization in the energy space. And I hope this presentation was able to give a good idea of the kind of role that PEG plays in this space. So definitely looking at research-based work, using that for advocacy, engaging with regulatory and policy institutions, and thinking about innovative solutions seems to be the crux of what we do. So that's who we are. And in terms of collaborations, definitely collaborations is something that are useful, and like everything else in Prayas, it happens very carefully. Collaborations are typically institutional, and we are actively looking for collaborators. As long as there is a value match, there are complementary areas that we want to work in and complementary skill sets that we have. So definitely we do collaborate a lot with other civil society organizations in taking forward regulatory work in various state level energy policy. So I was saying that collaborations are typically on an institutional level, and we do actively look for collaborators, but that happens when their work is complementary and we have some sort of a value match with our fellow travelers. One specific area where we have definitely collaborated with a lot of organizations is to look at state level engagement on regulatory and policy issues, and there we've had very strong and active collaborations with other civil society organizations in this space. We've also had collaborators on modeling and other analysis work. Some of our recent collaborators include Center for Policy Research, World Resources Institute, and the Gujarat Energy Research and Management Institute, just to name a few. But these are all on very specific and limited areas of our work.
Okay, thank you, Anne, for re-answering the question. And I would also like to thank panelists for being patient through the technical problems. Okay, so resuming back, so Ashok, if you could answer one more obvious kind of a question, that is, what are the emolument levels of the organization and how are the operations of PEG funded?
Yeah. So regarding emolument levels, I will say that we are not an organization that is very, shall we say, high paying in that sense. We are a fairly modest emolument levels in Prayas. So, for example, it would definitely be well below industry standard, if you like. So if you're talking about a consultant or equivalent similar organizations, our emolument levels will be significantly lower than that. So I would say that it would be useful to think of Prayas as an organization that fits somewhere between regular image of an NGO that you might have and what may be called as a think tank organization. So we fit somewhere in that spectrum between an NGO and a think tank, and our emolument levels reflect that. in terms of that is in terms of how we are able to pay people. In terms of where we get our money from, we are essentially a research organization, so we apply for research grants, and research grants are what support our activities. But the one thing that we do take care while applying for grants and getting them is to ensure that the grants that we get in no way compromise our independence. So we are very particular about maintaining our independence and the ability to take independent positions on any issue. And if we feel that there are grants or sources of support that might compromise that, we do not accept such sources of support. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, awesome. That was a very precise answer. I would like to thank all the panelists for answering the question. I would also like to thank the participants for asking great questions. So because of the time constraint, we might have been able to include all the questions that were asked, but we tried to include as much as we can, the ones that were asked in the Q&A chat box and also during the registration. But please do not hesitate to reach out to us in case you have any more questions. Thank you all. I would like to hand over the control now to Maria. Thank you, Nimita. This now brings us to the close of the webinar. We apologize for all the technical glitches, and we hope that we have been able to answer your questions about the organization, and this encourages you to apply for opportunities with us. Further details can be found under the Jobs tab on the Prayas Energy Group website, as you can see on the screen. With this, I thank all of you for attending this webinar and hope you can join us for future webinars. Thank you and goodbye.